pick up anything fun.
They did it. Let me know any questions you have about Starfield in the comments, as there will definitely be things that I will miss talking about in this review. Starfield is a big gamble. Not only is Starfield Bethesda Game Studios' first single-player game in 8 years, but it's their first new franchise in 25 years. It also has a lot riding on its success for Xbox, and seeing the development and hype surrounding this game, it's hard not to be either turned off by the rabid hype or wrapped up in that hype yourself. I fell into the latter camp. I was very hyped for Starfield. Even when all we knew about Starfield was a trademark and a rumor, Bethesda Game Studios is my favorite game developer, period. Ever since I was a kid. Like, I was 12 when Oblivion came out. It was my first BGS game, my first open world role-playing game of that nature, and I was lost in Oblivion for weeks. And then following up with Fallout 3 a couple of years later just solidified what Bethesda Game Studios meant to me. If you told that kid he'd be able to play Starfield 2 weeks before anyone else, his head would probably explode. So I am extremely thankful for this opportunity. But Oblivion and Fallout 3 gave me a particular feeling playing those games, exploring those worlds for the first time. And I have that same feeling when I play Starfield. I'm now close to 100 hours in Starfield across 2 different characters over the past 2 weeks. And as I sat down to write this review, I honestly didn't know how to start or where to start. There's so much in this game. And so let's start with the performance, and then come with me as I ramble about everything Starfield for the next 15 minutes. So when the review code came in, I was in the process of leaving my house for the weekend to see family, and I would barely be able to play the game. But that was okay though. Like, I thought I'd download it on my ROG Ally and like sneak in some game time when I could, except I read the review guide and it said that it's not recommended to play it on the Steam Deck or the ROG Ally.
That sign can't stop me because I can't read.
So I did try it anyway, and I was able to do the tutorial before it started crashing after that point, basically consistently. But I did bring my laptop with me and was able to play on my RTX 3060 laptop at 1080p medium settings and was averaging about 45 frames. And once I got home and booted it up on my AMD 7900X and RTX 3080 PC at 1440p high settings, I'm able to hit a pretty consistent 60 or above frame rate. There are areas of the game, mostly in like the dense city areas, where that frame rate will dip to around like high 30s, 40s range. But turning on the FSR2 definitely helps smooth out those rough edges of the performance in those areas. While there is all the FSR2 drama, and I'm definitely not a tech expert, so don't come to me for that specific stuff. Turning on FSR2, I barely noticed a difference in terms of the overall image fidelity, and it did smooth out some of those performance issues in those areas. However, there are some games where you can absolutely tell when you drop like 4 or 5 frames. It's so noticeable in the overall game feel, but that's not the case here. Like, even with an inconsistent frame rate, I barely noticed it. If anything, I noticed the times when my frame rate was above like 90 in interiors because of my 144Hz monitor, then actually noticing it being low. I suspect that's something to do with like the frame pacing, though I'm no expert, but overall the performance here is very solid, and I suspect it's the same on the Xbox consoles, but obviously your mileage may vary, so make sure you do check with people with similar platforms to yourself. But Starfield is beautiful. On every single planet I landed on, barren or full of life, there is always a beautiful vista to look at. And BGS have stepped up the graphical fidelity to like new levels here, and it's a perfect addition to a game that's about that planetary discovery, and landing on planets is always exciting because it's always going to feel different to the previous planet you were on. Like, I've taken, I don't know, 20 screenshots or more of just different planets and locations, and they're varied, they're dense, many of them have completely different color palettes to add to that sort of unique feel as you're exploring on the ground. The character models and textures are all excellent, though the skin textures across the board do look, I don't know, like a little too smooth or plastic. I'm not exactly sure how to describe it. It's a minor issue, but overall it's much improved over their previous titles, and it does look incredible. Nothing comes close to that feeling of landing on a new planet. I was unsure what to expect from the content in Starfield. You can see the No Man's Sky sort of inspiration with the scanning and planetary exploration in the direct, but there's also more traditional BGS questing and systems. Which side of the coin were they going to lean into? Well, it's both, and it's also neither. There is just so much to do in this game. Like, there's handcrafted BGS style content like everywhere, even on random planets. There's random encounters both in space and on the ground that will give you various little missions and tidbits. There's mission boards, like multiple mission boards for all of the major factions and some generic ones that you can complete. You know, you've got the Outposts, space combat, exploration, travel. It's hard to grasp the sheer scope of the game, and I felt extremely overwhelmed during my first 10 hours or so. It's really difficult to know what I wanted to do or what I should do, and for a time I was sort of stuck in like that choice paralysis and just kind of doing nothing, which was still fun. Like, I still was enjoying my time, but I ended up deciding, look, I'm just going to stay in Aquila City, which is the Freestar Collective capital, and just explore and do quests here. And these major cities are like quest hubs. There is an abundance of characters and people to talk to and things to do. And I remember doing a fun quest with a little girl that believed someone was stealing from a local shop, but no one believed her because she was a little girl. So I camped out until midnight and caught the thief in the act. And just doing like these little quests and helping out people in the area and learning more about people as I explored the city and its surrounding planet really helped ground me in Starfield, and then I felt more comfortable with its systems and being able to explore and go out. And I sort of did a similar thing with New Atlantis and Neon and just spent time in those cities doing the random quests, and they all are very different. Like, the quests in these areas are different, the people are different, the environments. Because of the freedom of having an entire galaxy to set this game, you've got the option where major cities can be completely different. You know, you've got the cyberpunk themed Neon or the more western themed Aquila City that are very contrasting in one game, but they feel at home in Starfield. There are other towns and villages in the game as well, which I won't mention, but I will mention that the soundtrack is absolutely incredible. Like, the music in this game is just top tier, like from just the moody undertones as you explore a planet or sort of creep around in an abandoned facility to the more like bombastic space combat, or even some of the main story beats are really well done. Like, I enjoyed every piece of the music in this game. A common criticism of Fallout 4 was that it wasn't an RPG. It was an action game in that there was very little choice and consequence or alternative ways to complete quests and objectives, and Starfield is the complete opposite. Nearly every quest I've either stumbled across or completed in the main story has had multiple ways to complete the objective. Some of them are unmarked, like say if you need to get a particular item from someone rather than paying for it, or in some cases they'll ask you to do a task and they'll give it to you. You could just pickpocket them. These varied mission designs aren't just in ways you can complete objective, it's also in the way that they're structured. Like, during a UC mission, I basically did like a tower defense setup as I held off a massive alien threat that was hunting me. It felt very like Alien Isolation. There was also another mission where I was crawling through vents with a voice in my ear telling me when to go and like where to go and stop and wait for this patrol to pass, like sort of Mission Impossible, like James Bond themed. And these are just a couple of the examples that I've experienced, but my absolute favorite was a main mission that felt like it was straight out of Dishonored. Like, I won't say anything more about it, but it put a massive smile on my face the whole time, and I absolutely loved it. But as mentioned, that freedom in Starfield of having a whole galaxy that you can set these different missions and themes and sort of mesh them all together, BGS is really flexing their creative muscles in interesting and unique ways that I don't think they've done before. And that's on top of the backgrounds and traits, which actually do make a tangible impact. Like, I've had multiple occasions where I can use my background or a trait in dialogue, and I picked kid stuff as like my main trait, I guess, and it's actually really interesting. Like, I highly recommend picking up a trait, especially kid stuff. Even though I have to send my parents money, I run into them like all the time in like multiple different locations. They've given me things, they have hilarious dialogue, and I can't wait to try the rest of the traits and see how they interact with different things. And it's all elevated by an incredible combat system. guns are all snappy, weighty, and fun to use. The skill and progression system unlock new abilities that can be used to enhance your combat potential or enhance just your weapons, and they really add to your build and that build expression and variety in terms of how you want to play the game in its combat. These skills are also like tangible abilities that you can unlock. Like, you know, the most common one is the boost pack skill, so you should absolutely grab that immediately because then you can use the boost pack. But like the stealth skill, allowing you to have the stealth meter, or even enabling pickpocket or some others, but there's plenty of options just in that skill tree that really enhance the way you want to play your character. Enemies will flank and take cover, move to different covers. Sometimes if you're wiped out like a whole squad, the last enemy will panic and run away, which is just hilarious when that happens. I've enjoyed the reactivity of the enemies as well. Like as you shoot them in the face or the legs, they stagger and react, and shooting them in their boost pack will sometimes cause it to explode. It's all great fun, and the boost pack skill adds to that combat with like adding a third dimension to those combat encounters, allowing you to sort of boost up to high ground, or in low gravity environments just sort of float above the encounter. It doesn't matter if they're in cover because you can just shoot them from above. And even 0G combat is also a good time as well. The movement can be a little bit finicky in 0G, but the combat overall is still fun and just adds different flavor to those sort of combat encounters. But combat isn't just on the ground. So ship combat is fun as hell as well. Like, I don't like space combat in No Man's Sky. It's always felt cumbersome and weighty as you slowly turn your ship around in one direction to find the ship that just like passed you. But BGS have done a great job here with each ship feeling different, having a certain weightiness to it based on how you chose to like build out that ship, but also the piloting skill, which enables you to use the thrusters so you can control your ship in a different way and perform like quick 180 maneuvers and stuff. So if a ship passes you, you can use those thrusters to do like a quick 180 and then use your boost to like zoom and like catch up to them. And on top of that, you've got the energy allocation system, which adds that extra elements of thinking and reactivity to the space combat. And as you sort of travel around, you know, you might need to boost up your shields because you've got multiple enemies coming at you, or maybe you've only got one left, and so you can get rid of that allocation in your shields and put it into weapons for that sort of final push. And I was surprised actually at how much I enjoyed space, though at times it feels like this game doesn't want you to spend a lot of time in space, as you can fast travel to almost anywhere in the galaxy that you've already been and often skip the space aspect entirely. There are locations and things to discover in space, but often they're marked on the star map anyway, so you can just travel directly to them, and which I guess, considering, you know, the size of scale of space, you know, it allows you to actually see where things are going to be. But I would have liked there to be some more freedom in just being able to fly around in your ship in space and move around in that big like atmosphere. I just would have liked it to be that little bit extra. But landing and taking off being a cutscene did not bother me at all, as it's a very short loading screen and it's barely even a loading screen at that. The crafting and outpost system is very much Fallout 4, but rather than being a mandatory part of the game, it feels like an extension, basically another game that you can invest in on top of everything else. And if you choose to unlock new resource projects and get better weapon or spacesuit mods or better food or outpost upgrades, you can safely ignore this whole system if you choose to, which feels like a direct response to the people that didn't enjoy the settlement system in Fallout 4. I did enjoy the settlement system in Fallout 4. Hell, one of the first videos on this channel was me doing a settlement build, but throughout most of my playthrough, I used outposts as basically a resource farm to collect minerals and resources on planets that I then turned into the research lab to unlock new mods from the projects and then use those mods on my weapons and spacesuit. But the system seems to be more in depth because you have to go to the research lab and learn the project and complete the project before you can then actually put the mod on your gear, and giving it that little bit extra of depth and taking away the requirement to actually invest in that system is a good sort of happy medium for the people like myself that enjoy the crafting system and like the outpost management stuff. And, you know, if you want to invest in it, it's now deeper and more complex for you to engage in, but now you don't have to do it if you don't want. But it's not all positive though. There are things about the game that I didn't like. Firstly, the UI, especially the inventory UI, feels like it's wasting so much space. It's sometimes unclear when you've got multiple inventories open, which inventory you're actually looking in. Like for example, if you're in a vendor's buy screen, am I looking at the buy screen of the vendor? Am I looking in my own personal inventory? Am I looking in my ship's cargo hold? As they all appear in the same columns, and the only way to distinguish the difference is the text at the top of the screen, it's sometimes hard to remember what inventory you're actually in, and on multiple occasions I've actually sold weapons I didn't mean to, or bought things that I thought I was selling. I would much prefer this to be spread out with buy on the left and all of my inventories on the right, just to make it a little bit cleaner, a little bit like the Fallout system, so I know what I'm actually looking at. It's a minor issue, but the amount of time that you spend in inventories, whether it be with vendors or your own personal inventory or companions inventories or your cargo hold, which is another inventory system, you're looking at inventories and looking at these menus very, very often, and they can sometimes be cumbersome to know exactly where you are and what you're looking at and which shortcut does what, but overall it's a minor issue. I just touched on it a little bit earlier with the space travel as well, but it's a little too easy not to engage in space. Like very rarely are you actually forced to be in space, and it's not like I want them to force me to do something, but the gigantic star map seems to take the place of just being in space, and that star map is very messy because it's a massive map of stars and star systems, and it's often hard to remember which planet this one settlement was in, and then not only the planet but the name of that star system and where that star system is located on the map. Like, I low-key think you need to take notes when you're playing this game if you find a location you want to return to of what the planet it was in and the star system, which is fine. You know, I've done that for a lot of games, but I would love a way to actually actively mark planets and locations in the game so I don't have to take myself out of that experience. Like, I know you can mark planets technically by placing an outpost on them because it'll always tell you where the outpost is, but just give me some colorful markers or something, right? Like, this game is set in 2330. Like, surely we've invented some colorful markers we can put on our ship by then.
Welcome to Constellation. We have a lot to talk about.
You start as a new recruit for the Argus mining company and are sent to grab an artifact for a mysterious buyer, and as soon as you touch it, the artifact knocks you out and gives you a vision. Barrett and Constellation show up, and very quickly you are whisked away to discover the truth behind the artifacts and what's out there. The main plot then takes you on that journey, looking for artifacts and discovering what they are and where they came from. I thought I knew where the story was going to go, and I was honestly dead wrong, which is pleasantly surprising and also engaging. There are still questions to be answered, which feel like will happen in a DLC, but overall I was really satisfied with the twists and the turns throughout the main narrative. Bethesda have done a great job honoring your journey throughout the game as well, like showing the choices and consequences that you make throughout any of your companions or faction stories or other missions you come across as well. I was really pleased to see that those choices I made actually had a tangible impact, and there is a new game plus, and it's a really cool feature, but that is all I will say.
Oh, flattery, huh? My favorite pastime, huh?
Voice acting is also top-notch. There is so many characters in this game, and all of them have unique voices and accents, and everyone sounds fantastic, which is great because you spend so much time of this game simply talking to people. The companions left me a little bit wanting. I like that the crew members are expanded from the typical settlers of Fallout 4 and how they interact with your ship as well as the outposts. They're definitely unique and have their own skills, and some of them have backstories, but there is 4 core companions and they're all a little bit limited. If you don't connect with any of them, you'll definitely see disappointment here, and I was a little worried that I would be in that camp until I met NorZZa, but she is absolutely fantastic, like best companion hands down.
Call me NorZZa.
Welcome to my home, NorZZa. It's a pleasure to have you here.
The feeling is not mutual, and I am not the one with whom you should be trying to curry favor, Marco.
The roster being only 4 like real companions other than the named crew members and then the unnamed crew members felt a little bit disappointing, and I was hoping for a couple more like hidden ones, but even still, each of them have their own interesting background and companion quest, and they'll interject in conversations and let you know what they think, whether they like your decisions, whether they dislike them. You can romance them, of course, if that's your cup of tea, and they obviously carry your burdens, but I liked the companion system. I just would have liked more actual companions. That's really the only complaint that I have, is that I only really connected with one of them, and I would have liked just a couple more options here. There is the 4 major factions as well: the United Colonies, Freestar Collective, Ryujin Industries, and the Crimson Fleet, which all have their own storylines that are definitely different from the others. Like, I became a full Freestar Ranger. I think I'm on like the last mission or 2 of the United Colonies faction, and I'm a pretty early stages in Ryujin, and I haven't started the Crimson Fleet because I was saving them for my Evil Guy playthrough. But there is a ton of content in these different factions, and really leaning into the different themes of their factions and their areas, which I quite enjoyed. Though I feel like these factions is where those extra companions could have been. Like, maybe they still exist and I just like haven't found them. It's totally possible, but I feel like these factions and the faction quests are just primed to have that one additional companion linked to them. But the faction quests are good. All the side quests I've come across have been engaging with different outcomes and different ways to complete them, and that is really good considering the small amount of bugs. So overall, I've recorded every single one of the bugs I've experienced, and you're watching them right now. I am legit shocked at the scope of this game and the limited amount of bugs that I've experienced. And every one of them has been like very minor visual bugs. I had one quest bug throughout my entire time, and that was just where enemies wouldn't get off a ship on a random side quest and I needed to kill them to complete that side quest. This was fixed in the day 1 patch a few days ago. Overall though, this is a smooth ride both visually and mechanically through the stars. In a year filled with must-play games, Starfield is a must-play game. Bethesda Game Studios have created a truly unique role-playing experience here. Starfield is both a visual and a role-playing delight. There is an overwhelming amount of engaging and dynamic content here that I cannot recommend this enough. I might be a little biased because I just love Bethesda Game Studios style of games. That's absolutely on me, and I'm letting you know that here, but Starfield is definitely close to the top of that list of BGS games for me, and I cannot wait to play more. But also, I can't wait to see how this game develops over time, both with mods and with DLC, and who knows where this goes. There is one hell of an engaging canvas here to play and experience, but also for content to be added in years to come. Let me know any questions you have about the game in the comments down below. Thank you guys for watching this review till the end. Thank you to our members for supporting the channel. My name is NorZZa, and I hope you have a great day.